One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. I'm here at the 2019 MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference and I'm joined by Damani Leech. Damani is the Senior Vice President of Football Strategy and Business Development at the NFL. Greetings, Damani. Thanks for joining us today.
Greetings. Do all the guests say that when they start?
Some of them do.
They match the greetings?
They laugh at me a little bit.
Greetings.
That's my thing.
I'm glad you're sticking with it.
Now, Damani, you've been there going on 4 years now in the NFL.
That's right.
You spent 17 years at the NCAA, culminating with the position of Managing Director of Championships. So you have a wealth of experience. I know you from working at the American Football Coaches Association. You had a big hand in football and a big hand in baseball there at the NCAA. And I'd really like to know, I guess, what is your role with the NFL? Like, what are you doing now, and how does what you do affect the game of football on the professional level?
Sure. So, Senior Vice President of Football Strategy and Business Development. What does that mean? That means I lead a group of people in the league office who focus on the game of football every day, all day, every day. And specifically, we look at how we play, coach, and officiate the game and figure out ways to make it better. Next year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, in some cases, 10 years from now.
Yeah, I'd imagine is it a series of meetings, a bunch of discussions all the time, just people in the office and people from different teams, or how does some of that work?
It's a little bit of all that. It's everything from the informal, which is you and I watch football games every weekend, and with a critical eye as football people, you wonder, like, why is the game this way or why is the game that way? And the difference between me and sort of most football fans is I go to the office on Monday and try to figure that out. To the more formal, where you get, as I tell our staff, it's a two-way street. Like, we need to be generating ideas. We need to be thinking about the game critically and trying to find ways to make it better. But then we're going to get ideas from Troy Vincent, from the commissioner, from the competition committee, from clubs, telling us what they think about the game or asking us questions that we got to go try to figure out.
Do you have some type of compilation of Post-it notes on the wall, like email folder of this is all the ideas that come in?
Honestly, I do. So the two things I do, one of those is notes on the wall. So I have several notes on my wall in the office, and then notes on my phone. I use the Notes app on my phone, and whenever inspiration hits, type it in there, and then come back to it later.
Right. No matter how tech savvy we are, the notes on the wall is one of the best things in the world.
Undefeated.
Right? When I used to plan the convention, I mean, I had the huge Post-it notes. I mean, they were all over the whole wall.
Yeah.
You still use it, huh?
Yep.
How involved are, I guess, Troy and Roger Goodell? How involved are they in this process? I mean, they probably watch the game with an analyzing eye, and they send you something, shoot you a text. Hey, man.
Absolutely. On the weekends when we are watching football in the office, so it is not usually sitting on your couch at home just with a bucket of popcorn. We are in the office on Sundays. Troy, myself, several other staff members are in there watching all the games all day long with a very critical eye about the game and how it's going. Not necessarily who's winning and losing, but how the game is from a quality standpoint. And the commissioner is either in the room or somewhere else and is definitely sending us notes during the games, asking us questions, things that we need to follow up on.
Is there a method of reporting for coaches who may question something, or do they send it through the people in their office? I mean, at the administration?
No, absolutely. It's a very formal process whereby coaches and general managers have the opportunity to submit questions to Al Riveron, our head of officiating, on a weekly basis, and then Al turns those around before the end of the week.
So you have a bunch of ideas, right? They come to you, process it, you gather them through the season. What is the process in the office for looking at some of these Post-it notes on the wall, taking it, synthesizing it, and saying, you know what, I believe this will help us out based on the data we've got? Like, so tell me about that process.
So what I would say is that the process is clear, but it's not easy. So the process is clear in that ultimately the 32 owners decide what is or isn't going to happen with the game of football. And for rules and policy changes, 24 of the 32 generally need to approve something. And from there, most of their recommendations come from the competition committee, who I and others in our group work most directly with. And it's there we've got to effectively convince the competition committee of a potential change. And that's where the not easy part comes, because you have coaches, general managers, ownership in that room, 8 or so individuals in that room that we've got to convince of a particular issue. If it's something we feel strongly about, or if it's something they feel strongly about, we've got to supply them with the ammunition to defend their position.
I imagine just saying this is what the numbers say is not enough for a lot of the people on that committee.
Definitely not. And it that's the, there's data, and then there's data science, and then there's analytics. And it's one thing to say, here's where passing yards are, here's how many penalties there were. But what we're doing now is going deeper into that to better understanding the game and providing data to support that.
Right. And thinking about data, of course, we're here at the 2019 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. This is my assumption, but you'll probably agree that the one area that everybody would probably agree with in terms of data is probably health, all right, health and well-being of the athletes. And tell me about that aspect of it when you get things relative to injury, or you get information and you present that. Do you guys present it, or do you bring in your medical professionals? How do you?
We do. We work. So we have a health and safety department led by our chief medical officer, Alan Sills, and Jeff Miller, the EVP of health and safety, and we work hand in glove with them. So a good example of that is what we did last year with the kickoff, where they came to us with data that said, hey, it looks like players are getting injured on the kickoff at a higher rate, much higher rate than they are on regular scrimmage plays. And so we took that data, we worked with our special teams coaches, shared the data with them, but then also married that with our player tracking data. So through that, with RFID chips on every player of every game, we know where players are on the field, how fast they're moving, the direction they're moving. Combine that high-level game data with that injury data and the expertise of our special teams coaches to change the way the kickoff works in terms of where people are lined up before the kick, what they can do after the kick in terms of wedge blocks. That's now no longer permissible, to the point that we saw I think close to 30% reduction in concussions on kickoffs this year.
Kickoff has been an evolution, like in the last probably 10 years, based on injury information when you talk about the college game and the NFL game. I wonder, how the things that you do in your position in your office, how does that overlap with the game at the collegiate level?
Yeah. So informally, there's lots of communications between people in college and pro football, but from a formal basis, we just had this meeting. We meet annually with the NCAA. So during the combine, when we're in Indianapolis, our representatives from our staff and the competition committee go over to the NCAA headquarters and meet with their staff and competition committee and really have an information exchange. We talk about how the year went for us, what were some of the key statistical changes and highlights, what are some of the key learnings in terms of health and safety, and they do the same. They share what they've learned this year, what their health and safety data is, and then both of us talk about what we're thinking about changing for the next coming season. It's a really good jam-packed 2 to 3 hour meeting where we share a lot of information, but it's really, really good, healthy dialogue.
I'd imagine that kickoff thing, because there were changes in college football too a few years ago. Does that come from conversation from both entities, I guess, in terms of college football and NFL, the changes they did in college football, and obviously I think the NFL made changes too over the last few years.
Yeah, we both did, and I'd say it's a delicate balance, because neither organization really wants to feel like they're trying to drive change to the other organization. Like, each entity is its own. They make their own decisions based on the unique nature of their game, but we do want to go into it with as much information as possible, and that's why the data and information sharing is so critical.
Right. I was talking to here at the conference Amy Hutchhausen, right? She's the commissioner of the America East Conference, and she talked about what the NBA has is it called Spectrum? Second Spectrum. Second Spectrum,
yeah.
And they are able to analyze the movement of every player during every game and use that information to make the game better, to make it more healthy, and it also drives business, right? In terms of advertising, marketing, whatever.
Yep.
The NFL, you guys use a company called
Zebra.
Yeah. And it's essentially the same thing.
The output is the same.
Okay.
So NFL, I think, is optically based, so they use cameras to capture the data.
Mm-hmm.
There's just more players on the field in football, and they're running into each other a lot. So we use these RFID chips on every player. There's 2 to 3 of them, and they capture a player's location 10 to 12 times per second on the field. And from that, you can derive all sorts of things.
Right.
You know how fast people are moving. You get play diagrams on every single play. A lot of information you can derive from the game about that. That's going to help from a football quality and competition standpoint. We can use some of that data for health and safety purposes I talked about with a kickoff. And then, just like the NBA, we're able to monetize it. We're able to sell it to broadcast entities, sell that data to digital media entities. So there's lots of benefits for us.
It's interesting. NBA uses optical
Yeah.
to track movement, and in NFL, you guys use RFID chips or whatever in their equipment type thing. On the college level, I wonder if it's possible. I mean, it would seem there's an expense. Right. So a lot of teams do it already in practice, so they can see what's going on with one of the players. But I guess on a broad spectrum, you think there would be benefits on the college level if everybody.
I think certainly from our perspective, we've gained a lot out of it that I think a lot could be transferred to the college level. So everything from efficiencies in scouting, self-scouting yourself as a team, as I said, drawing up play diagrams and whatnot, but then also scouting your opponents. How many coaches and quality control coaches do you need to have on your staff if you now have data that's going to do a lot of that work for you or do it a lot quicker? So you're going to be able to drive some efficiencies out of that. Health and safety benefits as well, not just from practice but also from game. And comparing that data, there's benefits there. Certainly from an NFL standpoint, I think a lot of our GMs and scouts would probably love to be able to see that data and add that into all of the other variables they're considering from a scouting standpoint, not just have somebody's 40-yard dash, but also now have how fast they're moving on the field and be able to compare that to their current players for draft analysis.
Those two don't always correspond in terms of speed.
I used to try to tell people that I had a high game speed. My 40 wasn't that great, but my game speed was really, really good.
That's funny because my game speed wasn't good, nor was my 40 good, right?
That's why we're both sitting here.
That's all right. As long as you're on the team, right? I was here. I can prove I was on the team, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, this has been a great conversation, Damani. I wonder, last question here as we wrap. You mentioned that what you do looks at things in the future, right? 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now. If you can discuss them, are there things that the NFL is working on that you think will probably happen in the next 3 to 5 or maybe 10 years based on some of the research you guys are doing, how the game is going now, the direction the data is telling you to go? Are there some things?
I think what I would say broadly is the game will increasingly become more and more data-driven, both on the field and off the field, that the availability of technology to provide that data in really clear solutions for people will allow people to make more data-driven decisions. Then it'll be up to the football community to decide what kind of data they want to allow in and around the game. So at the collegiate level, obviously, they're still trying to decide whether or not want player tracking data. A lot of people are going to have to make decisions about biomedical information, heart rate, things like that. How much of that data should be available and to whom? And then from a competitive standpoint, what kind of data do we want to allow in-game, right? We have Surface tablets, and there's limited information on there now. There's a lot more information that could be made available on there. Do we want that in and around our game? Same for college as well. How much of that data do you want to drive decisions like, should we go for it, should we not go for it? Should I call a timeout here or save it for later? What's the right play to call in this moment? A lot of things that we're doing now through research and video review before the game, we don't have that information with us during the game.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would wonder in terms of health, like, hey, something's happening here. He's not moving the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, right. His speed, a player's speed may have slowed down below normal levels. Yeah, and then you start to look at, all right, well, how many snaps has he been on the field? And then you aggregate that data, and then you start to be able to say, okay, now I know how many plays he needs to be in and then come out in order to make sure this defensive tackle is fresh on every 3rd and long. Right? You have data behind that as opposed to just looking at a player in their eyes and, seeing whether or not they're ready.
Exactly. Well, Damani, this has been an excellent conversation. It's good to see you doing well since back in the days of us working together at the American Football Coaches Association while you were at the NCAA. I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
Absolutely.
That was Damani Leech. He is the Senior Vice President of Football Strategy and Business Development at the NFL. And, of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.